but he
He's
doesn't
a
want to propose
Kennedy-esque
something.
figure in a way. I mean, so
But he doesn't want to propose something where success doesn't seem possible. I mean, it's not unreasonable.
Well, welcome to the banquet for the Mars Society Conference. It's the 15th annual conference and my third, so this is an important day. Also, thank you to all the speakers that we've seen so far. Of course, we've got one more day. We'll give them a round of applause. We've had everybody from scientists from NASA. We've had representatives of the commercial space program from, of course, SpaceX, from Virgin Galactic and others, plus enthusiasts, anybody that loves Mars. And I'm always thrilled to be at these events because it makes me inspired. And as a space blogger come space producer for Discovery News, I get some great leads here. So this is my ocean right here. So feel free to come and give me a card. I really want to speak to you, okay? Now, if you remember last year, the people who actually came to the conference in Dallas, you remember we had a guest speaker at the convention, Ashwin Vasavada, and he actually spoke today, do a question and answer session. And he's one of the project scientists for the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity. And he was saying, yeah, this time next year, in fact, I think it was to the day, this time next year, we're going to be seeing a rover land on Mars. Well, here it is. This is it, tomorrow. It's landing. And also, I pronounced his name completely wrong last year, so I had the opportunity to correct it this year, so I was very happy with that. Now, when I came up to Pasadena to present here, and I thought, well, you know, this is probably the closest I'm ever going to come to Mars. Through JPL, and tomorrow, fortunately, I'm going to have the luck to go to JPL and be in the news team there to actually hear the news as it comes from there. And I realized, you know, this is actually the nearest I'm going to come to Mars, but perhaps not. There's a man in this room right now. He builds rockets. You might have heard of him. And he's trying to make our interplanetary dreams come true. Now, this, in fact, is one term that I'm using a lot, and it's making mankind interplanetary. I'm a big believer that we need to spread throughout the solar system. In fact, I believe we need to spread throughout the stars, but that's going to be in 100 years' time. But for now, we need to go to Mars, and SpaceX is actually making this happen. But that's got to be worth a round of applause. Yeah, later on, Elon's going to be standing up here, telling us more about it, I think. Also, the Falcon 1 started, and the Falcon 9 continued, and now the Dragon vehicle will start ferrying astronauts up to the International Space Station by around 2015. Now we actually have a chance of retiring on Mars. If we keep going in this direction, we actually have a chance at seeing Mars ourselves. Who knows? But it doesn't stop there. We've heard from a spectrum of commercial space companies with their own unique routes to space. Now, whether this is space tourism, whether this is doing cargo runs to the International Space Station, whether it's doing taxi rides for astronauts going to space, ending the US dependence on foreign rides to low Earth orbit. But now we're hearing projects going beyond low Earth orbit. Now, the overriding thing, as I said earlier, that I get such inspiration by being here, and I just want to communicate that to the wider world. And as soon as I arrived, one of the first conversations I had was actually with Reverend James Heiser over here. And we just stopped having a chat. As you do at these conferences, it's wonderful. You just find a corner and just geek out over space. And James was saying, you know, space is really inspirational because we seem to be in a world where we are up against problems every day. And as part of the news media, I can see it. We've got wars that we can do nothing about. We've got economic crises that apparently our futures are over. Forget about our retirement plan. Politicians make the same old noises. And everybody seems to be fascinated by the Kardashians. And I don't I don't mean Star Trek. This has nothing to do with Star Trek, sadly. But one thing I realized, and our discussion together, we were saying that exploration is in us all, and it actually inspires us. It's one of the root, it's in our core. We want to explore. The next big adventure is in space. And the thing is, with space exploration, it's a very human experience. And it's up to us to make an impact felt in all facets of society. So a lot of responsibility comes down to my area. As we spoke about yesterday in the science media panel, there's a lot of responsibility on us to make sure the message is communicated. But we also need to spread throughout the community. We need to make this mission to Mars, a robot landing on Mars, to be the headline news. So if we can do this, the more the better. And it seems that, for one, Pasadena is completely swamped with people loving Mars right now. So this is a wonderful thing. It's not just the shape of a six-wheeled, one-ton rover. Curiosity is in us all. And to quote Deputy NASA Administrator Laurie Garver earlier today, space raises the human spirit. And this is exactly what this kind of conference does. So now, talking about raising the human spirit, we have a very special poetry reading by Doris Sutton down here. And she's traveled here from La Jolla, not very far, because I actually first met her in Ohio. Where was Dayton? Thank you. It was 2 years ago. She's loved poetry since she was 7 years old and has written ever since. Sorry, should I? Now, interestingly, there you go, Doris. Okay, let's see if we can test it. Can we test it? Yeah. Okay, and she actually wrote a poem back in 1941 that I heard in Ohio in the Mars Society convention back then. But it was actually published it was written in 1941 and eventually published in 2001. And there's some very strange crossovers with the current trend in space exploration. And it was surprisingly ahead of its time. This is the updated version that Doris has written, and this is the updated version of the one in 2010, wasn't it? So I'll hand over to Doris.
Good evening, everyone. The most beautiful, brilliant minds in America, looking forward to changing all worlds. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here again. I was in Dayton 2 years ago and read my original poem that I had written in 1941, mind you. Last year I was busy having a stroke, and that's the reason I'm not standing up. I can't, but I would like to. Anyway, I have a microphone, so maybe I can be heard even though I can't stand up. And I'm going to read to you a poem that I wrote in 1941. I've been writing poems since I was 7 years old. You might have little kids at home who like to write poems. I started when I was 7. I didn't stop until maybe the last 6 months. I haven't written too many poems the last couple of months. But encourage your kids and let them express themselves, because it's a wonderful feeling. I wrote this poem in 1941. I was born in 1920. Paul and I are World War II people. We're probably the oldest people in the room. But anyway, in 1941, I was 21 years old. I was living in New York with my family and had a few little arty jobs like timing radio programs at NBC, and I was invited by Gustav Davidson to be the associate editor of the Fine Editions Press. So I was sitting around reading poetry most of the time, all of a sudden we had Pearl Harbor. And amazingly, the skies seemed to be filled with planes. And of course, there was a lot of great war poetry that had come out of World War I. Now we were on the verge of World War II. And I don't know how this poem happened. It just happened. Like all poetry, it just happens. And I didn't think much of it. And in 1945, I met my husband, Paul Sutton. Here he is. We will be married 67 years in November, and we've had a wonderful time. One of the reasons is that, well, Paul is a physicist, and I couldn't quite enter into his world. He had a wonderful word sense, and he could enter into mine. And we've had a lot of fun with words for all this time. We're still having fun with words. So anyway, he liked this poem. You can imagine, I'm 92 now, and I've written 2 or 3 poems, more or less, each week since I was 7. I have a lot of poems. But he liked this one. He said, it's amazing. You hit it even before things were known. You wrote about it. And if you've written poetry yourself, you don't know where the words come from and the ideas. They just kind of surge up inside of you. So with his encouragement, I valued this sonnet. It was a 14-line conventional sonnet, not like some of the modern sonnets that don't rhyme and don't have the right meter, a conventional sonnet. And 60 years later, in 2001, lo and behold, this sonnet appeared in a collection of poems. And Paul read it again, and he said, "This is good." So with that encouragement, I had the nerve to read it to the Mars Society in Dayton, and that was 2 years ago. Last year I was busy getting over my stroke, and now I'm back on the scene, but I changed the poem because originally it was called Mars Monot, and it was about a single flyer who had the courage to go out into the unknown and face it all. But this year, I realized from what Paul told me also that there were perhaps 7 probes out there. It's no more a question of sending a single brave soul out into the unknown. The probes are coming back with all kinds of information. So I took the old sonnet and I spruced it up, and if I may, I will read it to you now. It is called Mars Probes 2012. Mars, our probes, plunging from the wingless earth, are sailing now with stars and flaming suns, flinging beyond the orbit of man's birth, beyond the arc and fury of man's guns, into silent worlds, high, white places, where rain is myth, absent God's own thunder. Will probes seek prophets, look in their faces, plumb their realm of agony and wonder? Mars probes in the skies, alien, alone, plummeting in peril up the skylands, drifting on sun and wind to a dim unknown, probing savage strangeness in the highlands. Now, will Mars probes find triumph and delight, transcending death in deathless cosmic flight?
Okay, now we are honored to have a keynote speaker with us tonight. His name is Professor J. Richard Gott. He's a professor of astrophysics at Princeton University. He's currently working on dark energy, way above my head. But his research interests include general relativity, cosmology, and time travel. But today, he wants to talk to us about why we should colonize Mars, and in his words, sooner rather than later. I'd like to welcome J. Richard Scott.
Thank you. When Dr. Zubrin invited me to give this talk, it meant a lot to me because I think he's done more than anyone else to get us people toward Mars. And so I think we should all thank him for his efforts. So I'm going to talk about why we should be colonizing Mars and why we should be in a hurry to do so. Now, I've been interested in Mars a long time. This is a globe of Mars I made when I was 14 years old. I took a Mercator map of Mars by Antonati, which was a famous map, and I painted it in detail on the globe. This is my first science project, really. Recently, much more recently, I've designed a map for Mars, a new map projection to show off Mars to its best. This is an elliptical map projection, which astronomers like, and it's an equal area projection, and it has the special property that local shapes along the prime meridian are perfect. And so this has the effect of making the polar caps have very good shapes, and they're important. And in a normal equal area projection, they'd be all stretched out across the pole. So anybody that would like to use this, I'd be happy to give permission to use that. Now, what I'm going to talk about tonight is based on the Copernican principle. This is one of the most famous and successful scientific hypotheses of all time. Christian Huygens used it. Oh, it's named after Copernicus, who told us that we weren't at a special place in the center of the universe. It's the idea that you're not likely to live in a special location. Christian Huygens used this to estimate the distances to the stars. He said, well, why should the sun be the brightest light in the universe? These stars out here could be suns just like our sun. That would make us not special. And so by comparing their brightnesses, he could make an estimate for the distances to the stars. When Hubble discovered that all the other galaxies were fleeing away from us, isotropically in all directions, it looked like we were at the very center of a giant explosion. But after Copernicus, we weren't going to buy that. We couldn't be on the one special galaxy at the center, not moving. No. If it looked that way to us, it must look that way to all observers on all galaxies. Otherwise, we would be special. And that led us right away to the standard isotropic, homogeneous Big Bang models of general relativity. And this led George Gamow and his students to predict the existence of the cosmic microwave background radiation, which my colleagues Penzias and Wilson discovered, and for which they got the Nobel Prize in 1978. It's one of the most remarkable predictions ever to be verified in the history of science, all from taking very seriously the idea that your location is not likely to be special. The Copernican principle works because out of all the places for intelligent observers to be, there are by definition only a few special places and many non-special places. So you're simply likely to be at one of the many non-special places. Now here's a picture of me, Here's a picture of me at the Berlin Wall. I was visiting there after college. There's the Berlin Wall. And people wondered how long the Berlin Wall might last. Some people thought it was a temporary aberration, and other people thought it was a permanent fixture of a divided Europe. So I used the Copernican principle to estimate how long it might last. And the argument that I came up with looked like this. There was nothing special about my visit. I was just in Berlin and I saw the Berlin Wall because it happened to be there. So I could have been observing anywhere from the beginning to the end of the Berlin Wall. And if my observation point was not special, there would be a 50% chance that I would be in the middle 50% of its history. Not in the first quarter and not in the last quarter, but in the middle 2 quarters. Now suppose I'm in this region. If I'm at the beginning of this region, then 1 quarter is past, and 3 quarters are yet to occur in the future. So the future is 3 times as long as the past. If I'm at the other extreme over here, then 3 quarters are past, and 1 quarter is in the future. So that means that the future is 1/3 as long as the past. So if I'm anywhere in between here, and there's a 50% chance of that, then the future would be between 1/3 as long as the past and 3 times as long as the past. At that time, 1969, the Berlin Wall was 8 years old. So I predicted to my friend that its future would be longer than 1/3 the past, but less than 3 times the past. 8 divided by a third is 2 1/3 years. And times 3 is 24 years. So I predicted that there was a 50% chance that the Berlin Wall would be gone between 2 2/3 years and 24 years. Now 20 years later, I called up my friend. I said, Chuck, turn on your television. Tom Brokaw is at the wall. It's coming down today. And sure enough, he remembered, he'd written this down. The wall came down between these 2 intervals. Now, the Berlin Wall could have gone out of existence a millisecond after I made that prediction. It was in the middle of the Cold War. An atomic bomb could have landed on Berlin. It could have been gone in a millisecond. Or it could be there for thousands of years, as there are many walls that have lasted for thousands of years. So it was remarkable that it came down within this limits. And I decided at this point that I should write this up. But scientists like to make predictions that have a larger chance of being true than 50%. They like the 95% confidence. So how does the argument work in that case? Well, if you're not special, there's a 95% chance that you're located in the middle 95% of what you're observing. That is, not in the first 2.5% and not in the last 2.5%. Now, if you're at this end, then 2.5% is 1/40th. So 1/40th of the history is past, and 39/40ths are in the future. So the future is 39 times as long as the past. On the other hand, if you're way over here at the other end of the middle 95%, then there's 1/40th left in the future and 39/40ths in the past. So the future is 1/39th as long as the past. So if there's a 95% chance you're in this region, and that is that the future is between 1/39th as long as the past and 39 times as long as the past. So I figured I should apply this to something important. So I applied it to the future of the human race. The human race has been around for 200,000 years. That's back to mitochondrial Eve in Africa. That's our past. So if the future, there's a 95% chance the future is between 1/39th and 39 times the past. 200,000 divided by 39 is 5,100 years. 39 times 200,000 is 7.8 million years. So I wrote published in Nature, May 27th, 1993, that with 95% confidence, the human race had at least 5,100 years left, but less than 7.8 million years in the future. Now that's a wide range, and it's wide because you want a 95% confidence level. But it's still a narrow range relative to what people actually predict. There's plenty of people that predict that we have maybe only 100 years left before we're extinct. And then there's other people that say we'll live until the sun dies, which is 5 billion years from now. And people even that say we'll last for trillions of years. So this is a narrow interval with respect to what some predictions are. Now, we do not have actuarial data on other intelligent species like ourselves. We do not. So arguably, this is the best we can do, and it's based on an important data point, which is our past longevity. However, we do have other actuarial data on other species. So here's a comparison. This is a logarithmic graph. This is the lower limit for the total longevity of our species, which is 205,000 years. That's the 200 in the past plus the 5,100 that we have left. And then here's the upper limit. This is 8 million years. That's 7.8 million plus 200,000. So this is what the Copernican principle suggests that our total longevity of our species will be. Now there's an interesting coincidence with the lifetimes of other species. These are the 95% confidence limits for all species. These are for mammal species, and this is our parent species, Homo erectus, and this is the Neanderthals. So interestingly, there's a coincidence between the Copernican principle based only on our past lifetime as an intelligent species able to ask questions like this and the lifetimes of these other species. Unfortunately for us, this diagram does not show any correlation between intelligence and longevity. Einstein was very smart, but he didn't live longer than the rest of us. So we're much more intelligent than all species over here, but there's no correlation here. In fact, if we were going to last another 500 million years, you'd be quite lucky to live in the first 200,000 years, when coincidentally, your past lifetime would indicate a longevity for our species that was equivalent to these other species. We are a species, we're the last species in our family, in the hominid family. There used to be more. In fact, we used to coexist with the Neanderthals. We're the only species left. The horse is like this. There used to be several species of horse. Now there's only one left, Equus equus. This looks like a family that's going on the way out. Rodents, which is another family, they have 1,600 species, so they have more chances. Another bad thing is that Darwin showed that most species do not have descendant species. There's a few species that have a lot of descendants, and then most species actually have no descendants afterwards. So if we don't protect ourselves, then our whole family may go out of existence. Now there was a book by Dougal Dixon called After Man, What Would Happen in Evolution After We Were Gone? And in this book, we became extinct about 1 million years from now. And then evolution took its course. And here's the result. Here's, rodent type things are chasing a rabbuck. There's a lot of rabbits in my yard. And these have grown up to take the niches that deers and dogs used to have. And this is the scary thing about this book is it's very plausible, but it's not a result that we would like. Now I thought I should check this important formula. So I decided to use it to predict the future longevity of Broadway plays and musicals. These are notoriously difficult to predict. And what I found was that the plays and musicals have been open for just a few days. This is as of the date of the publication of my paper, which had nothing to do with Broadway plays and so shouldn't occupy a special place relative to any of them. Oh, by the way, do not take this formula to a wedding and and 1 minute after the vows have been said, pronounce that the marriage has less than 39 minutes left to go, because you've been invited to a special place in the marriage, namely the beginning. But in this case, my paper had nothing to do with Broadway plays, so I could apply it. And the ones that have been open a few days generally closed after another few days, and the ones that have been open for years, they tended to stay open for years. There were 44 plays here and musicals, and 41 of them have closed, and they've all closed in agreement with the 95% formula, that the future was within a factor of 39 of the past. How long do people think these things might actually last? Well, here is The Kiss of the Spider Woman. It's a very good musical. The kiss that lasts forever. This is how long they thought it might last. And it closed eventually in agreement with the formula. And here it is, One Last Kiss, Final Sizzling Weeks. So it closed. Now here's another more famous one. This is Cats. You remember this? Cats, Now and Forever. Cats had been open for 10 years when my paper came out, and it stayed open for another 7 years, and then it was closed. Now, as an astronomer, forever is a long time. You mean they're going to be looking at cats long after the sun is dead? Yeah. Forever is a long time. So how did I know the cats was not likely to last forever? Well, if cats last forever, you have to understand there's an infinite number of observers who are going to see it when it's more than 1 trillion years old, okay? And all the people are seeing it more than 1 trillion, most all of them is more than 1 trillion years old. And if they're observing it, they see that it's lasted for 1 trillion years. And here's the 13.7 billion years, that's the current age of the universe when cats open. So they're going to see that cats is nearly as old as the universe itself. Kind of like electron. It's been around for the whole age of the universe here. But we do not see this. We see 13.7 billion years, and we see cats as only 10 years, so we see a very short interval here. So our observation would be very atypical. We would be very special indeed. So this is how you know that cats is not going to be around forever, and if it has an end, then it should end within that factor of 39 with 95% confidence level. This argument, same argument applies to our intelligent lineage It's only been around for 200,000 years, so it looks like this. And so this is how we might know that it's not likely that our intelligent lineage is going to last actually forever. Now, people have used my formula to predict the future of things. Landsberg, DeWin, and Pleas in Nature in 1993 used my paper to predict the longevity, future longevity of the conservative government in Britain, which was very stable at the time. It had been in power for 14 years. And so they predicted with this formula that it would be around for at least 4.3 more months, but less than 546 years. And sure enough, it went out of business. It was voted out 3.6 years later in agreement with that formula. Now, after I wrote my paper, I got a very nice letter from Mr. Beenan, who was head of the Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton. And he'd just written a book, a statistical study of 2,200 world leaders all through history. And after detailed statistical analysis, analyzing all the possible variables to predict the future longevity, this is the conclusion of the whole book. The length of time that a leader has been in power is a very good predictor of how long that leader will continue to hold power. Indeed, of all the variables examined, it is the predictor that gives the most confidence. So, and I would say, well, that's because the Copernican principle says your observation point is not likely to be special. And so the past and the future are related by a factor less than 39. Now, you can apply this argument to the future number of human beings. If you're not special, you should be located randomly on the chronological list of human beings ever to be born, just like you're randomly oriented in the phone book, not at the very beginning, not at the very end. So this is 70 billion people have already been born. So there's a 95% chance that the number of people to be born in the future is greater than 1/39th the past, but less than 39 times the past. So this works out to be at least 1.8 billion people more born in the future, but less than 2.7 trillion. And that puts some limits on the population scenarios that you propose. Interestingly, these three other people, Carter, Leslie, and Nielsen, had come to similar conclusions from different arguments. Leslie and Carter, in particular, used Bayesian arguments, and Bayesian statistics, like the Copernican principle, warns you against hypotheses where what you're observing would have to be quite lucky. So this is the limits on future population. Now here's a graph at the time my paper came out of the population. This is a histogram of population of countries. And there are about 190 countries. And the median population here is about 6 million. In other words, half the countries on the list, or that you'll see at the Olympics, have populations less than 6 million people. However, the black shows where the people come from. I mean, more people come from the populous countries. So right now, only about 97% of the people in the world come from countries whose population is greater than 6 million, greater than the median. How many people here were born in countries with populations larger than 6 million? Look at that, forest of hands. You come from a big country. Not a random country. You come from a big country because that's what makes you not special. Most people live in big countries.
In a big country right now.
Yes, there's no accident. Yes, but we're not having this conference in Nauru or one of the tiny countries. We're more likely to have this conference in a big country. You also have to likely to come from a century with a larger than the median population, because most observers will. Here's Here's a population graph of a species. It starts out with a few members at the beginning, and it eventually goes extinct. There's none at the end. And so somewhere in the middle, you have a population peak. Well, where do you expect to live? Well, in the population peak, because most people do. In fact, we live in a century where the population is within a factor of 2 of what people have calculated to be the carrying capacity of the Earth. So we live in a high population century. You're likely to live after some event that caused the population to soar, and before some event, whatever that might be, that caused the population to decrease. So this is a warning to us that the population in the future may go down. And if the population in the future goes down, it'll be harder to mount expensive programs like the space program. So this is what you might expect to see. Now, this is a population histogram that many people believe, that we have an exponential growth up to an equilibrium of about 10 or 12 billion people, and then it'll just stay at this equilibrium for millions of years. The trouble with this is it's anti-Copernican. If this is the scenario that we actually anticipate, then where do most people live? Most people are born out here on the long plateau. But you do not observe yourself to be living on a long plateau. You observe yourself to be living up here, which is very makes you very special. Most people are born on the plateau. So we shouldn't count on that. Now, the Copernican principle does have some good news. I would like to emphasize. Here are some different civilizations on different planets. Which one do you expect to live in? Well, the big one, of course. Just like you live in a big country, you expect to live in an intelligent civilization that has a larger population than the median. Because most observers do, and you would be typical if you lived in one that was larger than the median. So we're actually one of the successful species. And so we should bear this in mind. The science fiction movies, always have the civilization come as this giant galactic empire, and we're like a small Amazonian tribe that doesn't know that this giant empire exists. Well, on the Earth, though, you're not a member of a small Amazonian tribe living there. You're part of, it's much more likely for you to be part of the big civilization. Now, in the same paper in Nature in 1993, I predicted the future longevity of the human spaceflight program, which was then 32 years old. And the 95% confidence levels was at least 10 more months, but less than 1,250 years. Now, we know it's true. We're past the lower limit. It has lasted longer than 10 months. If it had gone out of business in the next 10 months, I would have been unlucky to be writing at the very end of it. But this number up here is shockingly small relative to the time scale for humanity. This is a short time scale. And so we should worry that the space program may go out of existence. Here's a picture of the pyramids, which I took. Here's a picture of the timeline of the building of these pyramids from the first one to the biggest one, Cheops here. These are centuries. And then I've shifted the time scale, and these are actual to scale pictures of the different rockets. This is the Vostok rocket that took up Gagarin. This is Saturn V, and this is when the shuttle started. And we're sort of sitting out around here. These are manned space vehicles. The Egyptians built pyramids, bigger and bigger ones, for a while, but then they built lesser ones, and then they eventually quit. So expensive technological projects are often abandoned after a while. The Chinese sent their navy all the way to Africa. They brought back a giraffe to the Chinese court. This was like the Apollo program. But then they just canceled it. And they didn't go on to discover Europe, and the world history would have been different, but they canceled their program of exploration. So this is a warning that expensive programs like this can be abandoned after a while. This is a picture again of the Saturn V rocket and the shuttle. These are two rockets that were proposed This was proposed to be built. This was a heavy lift vehicle that would take up as much tonnage as the Saturn V rocket, and this one's already been canceled. Now, the interesting thing is that the space program has been around for 50 years. And so we've put up a lot of tons into low Earth orbit over that time. And if we put up as much tons into low Earth orbit in the next 50 years, the Copernican principle will say that's not too much to ask for another 50 years. And if we sent up the same amount of tonnage in the next 50 years as we had in the past, I think that's enough to plant a permanent self-sustaining colony on Mars of at least 8 people, maybe 16, maybe there's a factor of 3 or 4 there if you use calculations that Zubrin and O'Neill had done for how much tonnage you need to start a space colony. Space colonies are incredible bargains. You only send up a few astronauts, and the astronauts multiply there using materials already on Mars, and they do all the work. If you plant 8 astronauts, you come back 3, and we can also bring up frozen egg and sperm cells to add to genetic diversity. You plant 8 astronauts on Mars, self-supporting colony, and you come back 300 years later, you could have 8,000 people living on Mars. Come back 600 years later, you could have 8 million people living on Mars, all descended from the first group. The Aborigines colonized Australia about 60,000 years ago. One estimate says that the group that came could have been as small as 30. One of the 3 waves of colonization for Native Americans that came across, the land bridge, could have been as low as 12. So you can start off with this extraordinarily small group of people, and they can make a large impact. It's important that you make your colony self-supporting, because if the thing you're worried about is the cutoff of funding from the Earth, because, you know, the people on the colony would not vote themselves out of existence. So it's important to make the colony self-supporting as soon as possible. Now, we have not done as much in space as we thought we would or that we could have done. In 1968, Arthur C. Clarke proposed that a human flyby of Mars could be launched in 1978. And this is the guy who proposed communications satellites. In 1969, Wernher von Braun had plans to land astronauts on Mars by 1982, and we had a talk by someone who worked on that project. In 1974, Gerard O'Neill at Princeton predicted that the number of people living in space could be as large as 100 to 200,000. By what year? 1996. Didn't happen. And in 1989, George Herbert Walker Bush proposed sending astronauts to Mars by 2019. It wasn't funded. The current plan by President Obama does not include a Mars landing, but only a trip to visit Mars's moons around 2030. So I think Mars is getting further away. Now, if you think intelligent species like ours typically evolve into intelligent machine species or intelligent genetically engineered species, then you have to ask yourself, then why am I not an intelligent computer? Why am I not a member of a genetically engineered species? If most of the intelligent observers in the universe are intelligent machines, then why am I not one? And this is the important one here. If you think intelligent species typically colonize their galaxy, then you have to ask yourself, why am I not a space colonist? Most of us in this room and in world history have been born, are continental colonists. I was born in North America. That's not the Africa where we started. Most of the people who've ever lived were not coming from Africa, which is the home continent. So you have to ask yourselves, why are we having a conference about the future of space travel? Why are we not having this on some colony that Earth planted long ago on some other star system? If we colonize 1 billion planets in the future, and there are people living on 1 billion planets in the future throughout the galaxy, then the odds of you being on the very first one are 1 in 1 billion. And Bayesian statistics would say the same thing. Now, if you say 2 planets like Mars, well, there's a 50% chance you could be on the first one of 2 that we colonize. So that's not prohibited. But these very optimistic scenarios, you have to ask yourself, why am I not a space colonist? And the fact that we're having this conversation on the Earth should make you worry that there's a significant risk that we will be trapped on the Earth and not get off. There's a danger of that, because in that case, you'd be entirely typical. So we should worry that we won't get off the Earth. Now there's Fermi's question, where are they? If there's other extraterrestrial civilizations in the galaxy and colonization occurs, why haven't they colonized the Earth long ago? Well, the Copernican principle actually has an answer to where are they. It is that a significant fraction of intelligent observers in the galaxy or in other galaxies must still be on their home planet, otherwise you would be special. So this explains why, is sufficient to explain why we haven't been visited in the past or colonized in the past. Now, this is perhaps the most important slide. I would say that the goal of the human spaceflight program should be to improve our survival prospects by colonizing space. The ancient Greeks put all their books in the Alexandrian library, and they guarded them very well. They took great care to preserve them there, but eventually the library burnt down, and we lost all those books. Sophocles wrote 120 plays. We've only got 7 of them left, because those were copies that had been stored elsewhere. This is how life has succeeded, by make copies and put them elsewhere. This gives you more chances. So we need a life insurance policy, a lifeboat, if you will, to have to protect us against whatever catastrophes might occur to us on the Earth. And you can tour the great museums and look at the fossilized bones of all the extinct species that give mute testimony to the fact that that catastrophes like that occur to species on the Earth all the time. It also can change your strategy if this is the goal, and you often do not hear the word survival mentioned in terms of why we should be having a manned space program. This improves our survival prospects. If we planted a colony on Mars, we might as much as double our survival chances. It gives us 2 chances instead of 1. We might double the chances of ever going to Alpha Centauri, so who's to say that 1,000 years from now that it might be the people from Mars rather than the people from the Earth that would undertake that adventure. Colonies can plant other colonies. The first words spoken on the moon were in English, not because England sent astronauts to the moon, but because it planted a colony in North America that did. So colonies can plant other colonies and give us a life insurance policy. The great Tyrannosaurus Rex only lasted 2.5 million years. The asteroid got it. And almost by definition, whatever causes you to go extinct is something worse than anything that's ever happened to you before and may well catch you by surprise. So it's good to plant yourself other places. Now here I am at the launch of Apollo 11. And here it is taking off. This is a picture that I took. It looked like a magical sword rising in the sky. The flame from this was longer than the rocket itself. There were 1 million other people there with me on that day. And this is the kind of exciting thing we could use today. People taking off, going to other worlds. So this is the moon landing. Now America has a particular stake in colonizing Mars and going on with this program, because even 1,000 years from now, people will certainly remember that one of the things America did was to land the first people on the moon. But the importance of that event is yet to be established in the future. If we go on to colonize the solar system, then this is a big event in human history. If we colonize Mars, you couldn't even call it world history anymore. So this is a big event. This is an important event. But Representative Torricelli of New Jersey once said, in support of continuing the manned space program, that if you canceled the manned space program, that Neil Armstrong's great leap for mankind would turn out to have been a small step after all. So America has a great stake in protecting its legacy in particular, and seeing that this is not just a one-time thing that's not followed up, but something that leads to something that changes the course of human civilization. Now, here's a picture of something that's going to happen on Mars in the year 2084. There's going to be a transit of the Earth and the Moon in front of the Sun as seen by Mars. This is a simulation of this. We recently had a transit of Venus that you could see from the Earth. But this is a transit of the Earth and Moon in front of the Sun that you could see from Mars in 2084. Now, the last time this happened on Mars was in 1984. And interestingly, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a science fiction story about an astronaut who was on Mars looking at the 1984 transit. Because back then, he believed that we could have astronauts on Mars by 1984. Now, the question I have today is, will there be anyone on Mars to see this? There should be. If we don't have people on Mars by 2084, we've made a terrific mistake. The time to colonize Mars is now, when the population is high, when we have a space program, when we have the teams of people available that can do it, and we should be warned that the space program is not that old and therefore fragile, and we should be going to Mars now while we have the chance. Now, I'm not saying that colonizing Mars will be easy, but Kennedy, in talking about the moon landing, said, we do these things not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Everybody remembers that sentence. But then he went on to say, because it's a challenge that we're willing to accept and unwilling to postpone. So space colonization, starting with Mars, is a challenge that we should be willing to accept and unwilling to postpone. Thank you. Okay.
Very funny. I wrote an article. I have to send it to you. It's along those lines. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Gott. We need to build more rockets, quick. Okay, we're coming to the time of the night where we start some official stuff, so I'd like to invite Robert Zubrin up to the podium.
Okay, so I'm here to give out a number of awards for people who've accomplished various things. I'm going to start with accomplishments of some members of the Mars Society here. We have one award that I'm going to be unable to give personally because the person involved is not here today. He's in Israel, but that is Michael Stoltz, who is the head of public outreach, public relations for the Mars Society, who's done wonders in breaking press for us. But people should know that this is the guy that's been responsible for a lot of our breaking press and getting our message out to the world media. And so thank you, Michael. Now I have two other awards here too, and they are for two of the people who have led the science program at the Mars Desert Research Station and have done a great deal to take this program and start creating it on a much more rigorous basis and create a real science program at the MDRS. You know, this is an all-volunteer program, and sometimes during a certain period of time it got chaotic, and these people have been working hard to rebuild it, and they have it well on track. And I think they've set the stage where we can try some much more ambitious things along those lines. These two people are Shannon Rupert and Gene Hunter. So I'd like you to come up and take your awards. Here's Gene, where's Shannon? Okay, so do either one of you want to say just a few words, or?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, and here's to more science at MDRS in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Our next award is to the York University Rover team. Okay, the York University Rover team, by the way, I believe this is the second time they've won the University Rover Challenge in the desert, and I believe they have placed in the top 5 years going. So this is an incredible team. And you should know the University Rover Challenge, they build the rovers, they operate them without seeing them. They have to do it all by remote control. Admittedly, there's no time delay as there is but on Mars, but otherwise it is as JPL controls rovers on Mars, and they have to accomplish various tasks, exploration tasks, utility tasks, and other things in the desert. And they're up against stiff competition from other groups. And these guys are winners. So here is the trophy for York University. And by the way, to show that we really appreciate what they do, there's also a check, which is shows that it's sincere. So there it is. Congratulations. Do you want to say a few words, or just?
Sure.
All right, just a few.
We just really want to say thank you and just really appreciate what the Mars Society does. It gives undergraduates like us a great opportunity to see what the real deal is like. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for making this happen. Thank you.
So now, come to the main event, as it were. This is an award. This is the very first Mars Pioneer Award that this society is given. and it's to an extremely unique talent. It's going, of course, to go for Elon Musk. Now, I want to say, everybody has read in the news the various accomplishments of the SpaceX, one thing after another, Falcon 1, Falcon 9, Dragon, so forth. And of course, they just won a major contract from NASA of $440 million, which will, I think, is a reward for work well done. Congratulations for that. But I want to make some personal observations about Elon Musk. Okay. By the way, is Frank McNamara here? Frank McNamara. Does anybody know where Frank McNamara is? Does anyone know who Frank McNamara is? Okay. Well, okay, forget it. But all right. I first met Elon Musk at a Mars Society fundraiser that was held in the Bay Area in 2001. And it may seem strange to you, but in fact, prior to that event, I had not heard of Elon Musk, despite the fact that he was already at that time a very significant figure in Silicon Valley in that world, but I didn't live in that world, and I didn't know about him. He came there, and he made a significant donation, and then we talked, and he came over to my place, and we talked a lot more, and he made a much larger donation to the Mars Society, and I must say one that allowed us to launch the Mars Desert Research Station program, which since that time, there has been over 700 people have been able to participate as crew members in that station. And which is now self-funding. But then he went off to, do his thing. And when I first heard that what he was going to try to do was build a rocket company and accomplish, cheap access to orbit on, his own money, I and a number of us who'd been around the block on this thing were frankly dismayed. Because we had heard the story before. There had been a succession of wealthy individuals who had made similar declarations and launched companies. Two of the most recent examples was the Beale Company, there was the Walt Anderson and the Rotary Rocket Company, before them there were Conestoga people, there was Kistler, and every single one of them had failed. In fact, none of them ever cleared the tower. This seemed to be another one of those things. But then a few years went by, and I had a chance to go on and visit Elon in his initial factory out in the LA area, not the same one he has now. This was considerably smaller, but he had gotten started. And it was apparent there's some things going on here that were very different from Walt Anderson or Beale. In the first place, by 2005 or so, which whenever this visit occurred, Elon knew a lot about rocketry. Okay, in fact, he knew everything about rocketry. In 2001, he had known nothing about rocketry. And by the way, and this really matters because what these other fellows had done is thrown a chunk of their discretionary change at this and said, let's see if something happens. Well, nothing happened, I guess I'll give up. He didn't just throw his money into it, he threw himself into it. Okay, he learned the trade, he put his mind into it, he put his talent into it, he put his heart and soul into it, and he was working on it. And it was at that point that, it became clear to me that this could go in a significantly different way than the previous story. And then, of course, he actually started succeeding. Well, first with launches that didn't succeed, but at least they were launches, and then with launches that did succeed. And I must say also the fact that he persisted after several failures, several obviously very expensive and daunting failures. And by the way, I got to tell you, because I build and test things, and you put a great deal of effort, and you put your resources into it, and you work on this, and work on this, work on this, and then it's finally time for the test, and the thing blows up, and boy, it's not a nice day. Okay, but then you have to try again. You got to stay in the game. You got to push on. These other people were quitters. He pushed on through the several failures to finally make the thing work. And then went and launched the Falcon 9, which was a serious launch vehicle. And I did a calculation on my own at that time. I did not have any inside knowledge about SpaceX, but I looked at the thing. I looked at what I knew about the size of his payroll and how long he'd been working. And I already calculated that he had done this for a few $100 million. And this was a program that, in a conventional aerospace environment, would have cost a couple of $1 billion. And I wrote an op-ed in SpaceX, the new Sputnik, basically telling the aerospace industry, hey guys, you're being Sputniked here. And an analysis from SAIC wrote and says, no, you can't be right. They couldn't have done this for a couple of $100 million. It's absolutely impossible. This must have cost at least $2 billion. And then SpaceX corrected them. But that's the thing. I mean, to create this system, and then I went and visited him in his new place, and I saw this incredible company, and I saw how dynamic it was, and the kind of workforce that he created, and the team he had created, and he told me certain things, and some of the stuff I believed, and some of the stuff I didn't, but I just had to look at the people and look at what was going on that place to know that he had put together a winning team, and these guys were winners, and these guys were serious, and this is extraordinary, and it's totally extraordinary what has gone on here, and there is something new under the sun here. And then finally, one more thing, two more things I have to say. This guy, he is living disproof of the materialist view of history. Okay, that is that all major things that happen are driven by economics, by greed. He may well make money in SpaceX, because this guy could make money doing anything. I mean, he's even making money with electric cars, which is just astonishing. Okay, but but he's not doing this to make money. Don't believe that for a minute. If he wanted to make money, he could have set up a dozen .coms and stuff between 2001 and now, that all of which would have made incredible amounts of money without him knocking his brains out trying to build rockets which sometimes blow up and really leave you feeling very unhappy, and and really going out in a lurch. And of course, he's doing well right now, but this is still a very risky business. He's exposed to technical failure. He's exposed to the political shifts that are beyond his control, to economic shifts, and to be right out there right now is doing that. This is not being motivated by profit. It will need to be sustained by profit in order for it to happen, but it's being motivated by an idea, and I'm sure we're going to hear from him, his view on that. But, I only know Elon a little bit from the outside. I've met him on several occasions, talked to him at some length a few times, but I think I know him on the inside, because I think I know what motivates him, and it's the same thing that motivates me, and I think the same thing that motivates most of us. It really wants to make something truly grand and necessary happen, and is willing to put himself on the line for that purpose. So it's my great honor to present the Mars Pioneer Award to Elon Musk, and before he comes up, I would like to show you the trophy. So, the symbolism here, I hope, is apparent. Okay. We have the planet Mars, and upon it, a possibly recognizable spacecraft, the Dragon. And that's the vision, and here is the man who is very much in this world, but not of it, Elon Musk, and I'd like to invite you up. And the inscription reads, "The Mars Pioneer Award presented to Elon Musk by the chapters and members of the Mars Society, the 15th International Mars Society Convention, held in Pasadena, California, USA, August 3rd through 5th, 2012, for outstanding achievement in furthering the goal of the human exploration and settlement of Mars." Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you very much for the award. Yeah, it's great to be before so many people who believe strongly in the establishment of life on Mars. I think my reasons for being interested in Mars and doing SpaceX are really that they come down to basically just two things. One, which the prior speaker was articulating, which is the defensive reason, in that if we are on more than one planet, the probable lifespan of human civilization and the light of consciousness as we know it is going to be far greater than if we are on one planet. So there's that defensive reason, that life insurance reason, and I think that's obviously a very important thing. Earth's been around for 4 billion years and civilization about 10,000 years, and it's only now that we have this the window has just cracked open where it's possible for life to extend beyond Earth, and so I think it sort of seems sensible to take advantage of that window while it's open. Hopefully it will be open for a long time, but it could be open for a short time, and so we should take action, and that's sort of the defensive reason. It's not actually the reason that gets me most fired up about Mars. The thing that actually gets me the most excited about it is that I just think it's the grandest adventure I could possibly imagine. It's the most exciting thing. I couldn't think of anything more exciting and more fun and more inspiring for the future than to have a base on Mars. And it will be incredibly difficult, and there'll probably lots of people will die, terrible and great things will happen along the way, just as happened in the formation of the United States. But it'll be one of those things that is incredibly inspiring, and we must have inspiring things in the world. Life cannot just be about solving, this problem or that problem. There must be things that, when you wake up in the morning, you're glad to be alive. And that, I think, is, for me, the most important reason why we should pursue the establishment of life on Mars. Now, of course, I'm preaching to the converted here. I expect to hear few objections from this audience. I think really what matters is finding a way to do it. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of background on my genesis of how I got into space. Sort of started when I was in college. There were three areas that I thought would most affect the future of humanity, and space exploration, the extension of life beyond Earth, was one of those things. And I didn't ever expect to be involved in it because I thought it was the province of governments, and besides which it sort of seemed, at least 21, 22 years ago, that it was likely to occur because we went to the moon, and then of course there were people going to Mars, and we'd be establishing a base on the moon, and there'd be eventually a base on Mars, and that sort of seemed like the natural progression of things. And then amazingly, it didn't happen. And I kept thinking, well, it's about to happen. And it just didn't happen. There's a Monty Python skit about this. Suddenly, nothing happened. Before you know it, nothing happened. In fact, in approximately 2001, I was with a good friend of mine in college, my college housemate actually, in New York, and he asked me what I was going to do after PayPal, and I said, well, I've always been interested in space, but of course there's nothing that I as an individual could do about that. But But the question got me curious as to sort of to find out, okay, well, when are we sending people to Mars? So after I got back to my hotel room, I went to the NASA website to sort of look up the schedule. Because of course there had to be a schedule. And I couldn't find it. I thought the problem was me, because it must be here somewhere on this website, but it's just well hidden. And it turned out it wasn't on the website at all, so which was shocking. So then I thought, well, perhaps the reason is that the American people have lost the will to explore, or if we just had more, if we got people more interested in the subject, then they would be inclined to want to do it. This turned out to be a false premise, by the way, but that was my initial thought. It was a mistake. So at first I thought, well, perhaps if we can do a small philanthropic mission to Mars, something that would get the public excited, then that would result in a bigger budget for NASA, and then we could do exciting things and get the ball rolling again. And that's about the time that I started talking to Robert Zubrin and a few other people. And so initially, the thought was to send a small greenhouse to the surface of Mars with seasoned dehydrated nutrient gel. They would hydrate upon landing, and then you'd have this little greenhouse on the surface of Mars. And the public tends to be, as they should, interested in things that are precedents and superlatives. So this would be the furthest that life's ever traveled, the first life on Mars, and then you'd have this great money shot of green plants on a red background. So that would be, I thought, okay, well, that could get people pretty excited, and so I started investigating what that would take, and I was able to get the cost of the spacecraft down to low single-digit millions, and the cost of communications down, and I was able to get everything compressed except for the cost of the rocket. So the U.S. rockets were way too expensive. Something like a Delta II would have cost $60 million, and I figured I needed to do two parallel missions, so two identical missions in case there was an equipment failure, because then it could be counterproductive. It's like, look at that fool, he did that Mars mission, it didn't work, and now we definitely shouldn't do Mars. So I figured we had to have redundant missions, and I just didn't actually have enough money from the sale of PayPal from my stake in the sale of PayPal to actually do that. So I just didn't have enough money. So I went to Russia in late 2001, early 2002, to try to buy ICBMs. Right? And that's as crazy as it sounds. So I was, I guess, about 30 years old, internet guy, arrives in Moscow, wants to buy the biggest ICBM in the Russian rocket fleet. I said, I don't need the nuke, just need the rocket. And they thought I was crazy, but then they also thought, well, he's got money, so that's... So I was able to actually negotiate a deal to buy a couple of Dneprs. Now, at the end of all that, I decided not to conclude the deal. So I negotiated a price, but decided not to conclude the deal because after my third trip to Russia, that's about the time that I realized that my original premise was wrong. That it is in fact we do not lack for will, particularly in the United States, perhaps the world as a whole, but particularly not the United States. It does not lack the will to explore, not in the least. In fact, the United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. Almost everyone came here from, they came here from somewhere else. So you couldn't ask for a group of people that are more interested in exploring the frontier. And but if people do not think that there is any way to do it, if they don't think there's a means, then it's somewhat irrelevant. You're not going to bash your head against a brick wall if you're confident that your head will break before the wall will break. It's just not going to happen. So So that's when I decided to start the rocket company, because it was clear that we'd not made advancements in rocket technology, and that was the reason that we hadn't made progress. The rocket technology was actually going worse. It was costing more and more to send things to space than in the past. So we had a negative technology curve, which is counterintuitive because we're so used to things in the consumer electronics realm and in everyday life improving. We sort of take it for granted, like it's as though things automatically improve. They do not automatically improve. They only improve with lots of effort and resources. You saw the graph, or the picture of the pyramids there. I mean, Egyptian civilization got to the point where it could create things like the Great Pyramid of Cheops, but then lost that ability and never got back there. Or Roman civilization went through a deep dark period. It's not a given that things improve. There has to be a forcing function. People have to do it. So anyway, so I started SpaceX, and I had many people try to convince me not to start the company. That really tried their best, and many of my closest friends. I mean, if there was anything they could have done to stop me from starting the rocket company, they would have done it. One good friend of mine compiled a footage of rocket failures and forced me to watch it. I said I'd seen them all. So it was certainly, but I think that they perhaps misunderstood the premise, because when I started SpaceX, it was not with the expectation of success. I thought that the most likely outcome was failure. But given that the thing I was going to do previously, which was the Mars greenhouse mission, I expected that would have 100% chance of 100% likelihood of losing all the money associated with it. So if a rocket company had less than 100% chance of losing all the money associated with it, and therefore was actually quite a bit less risky than the thing I've been doing before. Anyway, so fortunately, things went reasonably well with SpaceX. Not in the beginning, because the first 3 launches of the Falcon 1 rocket that we did failed. And as Prof. Zubrin was saying, it's not a good day when the rocket fails. The first rocket failed only, I mean, it impacted 60 seconds after liftoff, not far from the launch site. So me and the rest of the team spent all of that day picking up pieces of the rocket, which is a very sad thing. But we picked them up to sort of see if it would help figure out what went wrong. Fortunately, the 4th launch, we were able to reach orbit. That's a good thing. It's a good thing we were able to do that, because I had no more money left. So, yeah, Tulula, my wife over there, she's witness to the 3rd and then the 4th launch. Yeah, I was so stressed out at the 4th launch, I didn't even actually feel elation. I just felt relief. So it was a very, very close call, but fortunately the 4th launch worked, and then since then all of the launches have worked. I hope they continue to work. And SpaceX has gotten a lot stronger, and we've actually been slightly profitable for the last 4 years approximately, and should be again this year. And the rockets now are much bigger, and we've got Falcon 9, which is about a 1 million pound thrust rocket, and we've got an upgraded version of Falcon 9 that's going to launch next year, which will be almost 1.5 million pounds of thrust, and then the Falcon Heavy, which will be over 4 million pounds of thrust, which is about 60% that of Saturn V. In fact, with 2 Falcon Heavy launches, you could actually send people back to the surface of the moon. Most people probably aren't quite aware of the scale of the rocket that we're building. And Falcon Heavy should launch probably around the end of next year, or certainly by early 2014 at the latest. And that I think will represent a significant improvement in rocket technology. And then very importantly, we're also working on reusability. Because if you really boil it down to the various, the crux of why don't we have a base on Mars, as I mentioned, there's rocket technology, but what really needs to be developed, the key invention that's necessary is a rapidly and completely reusable rocket. This is a very difficult thing to do on Earth, because Earth's gravity is quite high. It's right on the cusp of impossibility for such a thing for a chemical rocket. So if you take an expendable rocket, even after a lot of smart people are using advanced materials and really approaching the limits of engine efficiency and everything, you'll typically get 2 to 3% of your liftoff mass to orbit. That's for expendable rocket. Now if you say, well, we want to make it reusable, we want to bring it back to the launch site, it's got to survive the rigors of a re-entry, all the systems have to be capable of surviving multiple firings and thermal fatigue, and it's really, you add a lot of mass when that happens. And previously, when people have tried to make a reusable system, they found that they would get some portion of the way and then conclude that success was not one of the possible outcomes. Now, in government programs, of course, the program would still continue for quite some time. It's funny but true. And so the real trick then is to say, can you create a rocket that is efficient enough that in an expendable form you can push that what would normally be 2 to 3% of mass to orbit up to maybe 4% of mass to orbit. And then if you can get really good about the reusable elements, maybe that can only be cost you 2 of those 4 points. So on net, you would still get 2% of roughly of your liftoff mass to orbit. That's the thing that needs to happen. In order for that to happen, you have to really get kind of straight A+ across the board in all elements of the rocket design. Every little tiny thing, the engine efficiency, thrust to weight, the engine, the tank mass, the pressure mass, the secondary structure, the wiring, even the weight of the computers, and everything matters immensely. But if you do all those things right, then it is possible to make this work. And this is what has given me hope recently in the last few years, because I wasn't sure whether it was possible. But in the last few years, I've become convinced that it is possible. Of course, just because something is possible does not mean it will occur. But I think it can occur, which is, like I said, success being one of the possible outcomes is very important. So that's the breakthrough that SpaceX is really trying to achieve. Because the stuff we've done thus far, I think, is good. I think it's evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. And we really need the revolutionary thing to work. So I think over the next few years, we'll see if we're going to be able to do that rapid and complete reusability thing. But I'm actually, I probably should sound more optimistic than I am. I am actually quite optimistic that this will occur. So I don't want to leave any doubt in people's minds. I'm quite optimistic it will occur. And then going beyond that's for Earth orbit. But now to establish life on Mars, I think you really ultimately need to be able to carry millions of people there and millions of tons of cargo. So you really need a fully reusable Mars transportation system, which is yet a more difficult step than creating a fully reusable Earth system. And then I was really worried that would not be possible. But last year, I became convinced that it actually is possible, which made me very happy, actually. In fact, I think Tallulah was there when I was pacing around the bedroom late at night, trying to see if this would work. And so that's good news. Now, I could be deluded, but I'm pretty unless I'm deluded, I think we've got something in mind which would be a solution that would work. And then comes to sort of the threshold of what it really comes down to a cost. What cost does a trip to Mars have to be in order for it to be a self-sustaining reaction? And I think you've got to roughly get to the I think around $500,000. If people could pay $500,000 to move to Mars, sell all this stuff on Earth because you don't need it obviously, then you could move to Mars. Then I think that would work because that's basically the net worth of sort of a roughly middle income earning person after about 25 years in the United States is roughly $500,000. So, in fact, it's kind of hard to buy a house in Southern California for, $500,000 in a lot of neighborhoods. But I think at roughly that level is where it would work. So that's where we're going to get to. And my calculations show that it should be possible. In fact, it is possible, according to me. And then but there's a great deal of work that has to occur, and then to make it a reality. So that I think is, I think that should be really good reason to feel good about the possibility of life on Mars. So I think that's probably what I'd like to leave you with. And then in the ensuing years, we will unveil more and more about what we're going to do, and there'll probably be some ups and downs along the way, but I can finally see a path to that objective. Like I said, as long as I'm not delusional or haven't made some significant error, then I think that will hopefully come as good news to people in this room. Thank you.
So, now I'm going to make some observations about our general situation. We're in a very interesting situation right now, and there's a lot of promise in it, but I have to say it could go either way. We have the Curiosity landing tomorrow night. If this succeeds, it is going to be, by far, the best Mars exploration mission ever. This probe has instrumentation an order of magnitude more powerful than that of the Mars exploration rovers. It has a data rate that is an order of magnitude greater. It has mobility systems. It has, just to take one example, it has the ability, in my view, to detect life on Mars. For instance, in that it has a methane sniffer and isotopic analysis that would allow it to distinguish between biogenic methane and the inorganically formed methane. So it could catch the scent of life on Mars. And conceivably, if this country was so disposed to receive that piece of news in the appropriate way, could really light a fire here. On the other hand, the mission could fail. It could crash tomorrow night. The Mars exploration program right now is in significant disarray. In that the missions that were scheduled for 2016, 2018 have been canceled, And while there are some people, we heard from Congressman Schiff this afternoon, that want to fight hard to put those back on, under conditions of failure of curiosity, that could be extremely difficult to do. And then beyond this, we've got the fiscal cliff, we've got budget deficits, we have a presidential election which could shuffle the deck, and either way could be good or bad. I don't want to go into psychoanalysis of the different candidates, but there's all sorts of contingencies that could come out there. But just to take one example, though, of a bad outcome, if one remembers back to the last congressional train wreck when they were having an impasse over the budget, and some people were saying, well, what of it? We can shut down all the federal government except for the military and Social Security, and basically what do we need the rest of this stuff for? So the poster child for something that we don't need, it would be the space program under those conditions. And there really has to be, so there is potential peril here. There's both opportunity and peril. You know, they say nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, but people have to take that idea into their heart and they have to fight for it and make a stand for it. And that's where we come in. And furthermore, regardless of short-term outcomes, we have to spread the idea because you never know where it could end up. I'm not exactly sure where, from whom, Arthur Clarke, Heinlein, whomever, the ideas that were spread that ultimately sprouted in Elon Musk. But these ideas that are taken in by people in their youth or some or other, these people show up in various places, some as entrepreneurs, some as political figures. These ideas matter, and the spreading of these ideas in certain ways are the most powerful things that anyone can do. Although you don't see the outcome immediately, it nevertheless is what happens. So, you know, we're going to try to deal with this in various ways. We're going to try to deal with it directly through, you know, mobilizing directly, speak to congressmen. We'll probably have more Capitol Hill events like the one we had last fall. We want to have public outreach events. We also want to, we can reach people. Actually, our most effective thing for generating public outreach has been the Mars Desert Research Station. We've had phenomenal press coverage of the activity there in major press. And also, as I said earlier, you know, we've had over 700 people have actually participated in this station. And I cannot tell you, beyond the science that's been done, to me the most impressive thing is the change that happens to the people that go there themselves. I can't tell you how many letters that I've received from people that have crewed in the Mars Desert Research Station, and I get a letter from them either shortly afterwards or 2 years afterwards that says, I wanted to tell you this has changed my life. This, I got it. Okay, this changed what I was doing. And we're changing the minds of hundreds of people that way, and then indirectly through outreach. We have plans right now. We want to upgrade the Mars Desert Research Station. We want to have a paid principal investigator there that can impose much greater rigor in the simulations and much greater significance to the science being done there. And that's important, not just for the science, but for the realism of the sim, because unless you're really trying to do science, the sim doesn't count. Okay? Unless you're really trying to hit the target, you're not going to learn marksmanship. You're not going to learn what tactics allow for effective exploration on Mars unless you're really trying to do field exploration within the constraints that humans will face on Mars, imposed to the best of our ability. So we need to do that. We want to have regional events as well. And, well, all these things cost money. Okay? We do think, we have no paid staff in the Mars Society, none. Okay? I don't get paid. Susan Martin, our executive director, doesn't get paid. John Baranka, who runs the logistics at the Mars Desert Research Station, doesn't get paid. Okay, the remote science team doesn't get paid. We do not pay our crews who man the Mars Desert Research Station. You know, you've probably seen our call for volunteers. Volunteers wanted, hard work, no pay, eternal glory. And that's what we offer. So, but nevertheless, even without paying anyone anything, you organize events, you got to pay for the hall. The Mars Desert Research Station, unfortunately, the people that supply the fuel to our station won't do it on a volunteer basis. They haven't quite been moved to that extent yet. But it takes money. We also, especially in dealing with students, some of them need help in flying there, and we do provide some of that sometimes. It takes money. We're operating on a shoestring. Okay, we're doing things as efficiently we can, but it can't be done for absolutely nothing. So I have to, you understand the importance of what we're trying to do. I think you've seen some of the successes that we've had, but also some of the critical issues that we face at the moment. If we're going to wage battle, we need to have the stuff. So I want to ask people here to give. And so I want to ask right now, who here is willing to give $1,000 to the Mars Society? I'll be the first volunteer. Who else? Okay, Elon Musk. Over there, Mark Arnold and Barry Stott. In the back, I see a gentleman raising his hand. Others over there, is that Frank Crossman? Over there by the door. Oh, okay. Others? Anyone else? Willing to give $1,000? Okay. Who here is willing to give $500? Okay, see some hands here. Bishop Heiser, Kurt, okay, Jerry, is that a gentleman over here? I can't see very well. I don't. Right, this person over there. Okay, anyone else? Who here is willing to give $500? Okay, who's willing to give $250? Okay, we have someone over the, okay, there, thank you very much. Eric, the others? Oh, what? Yeah, we have Kurt. I know there's a statement you wanted to make in association with this.
Well, I'm Kurt Chankaya from the Dallas chapter of the Mars Society, and we want to talk very briefly about one of our members, Roger Carr. Roger Carr was a founding member of the Mars Society. He helped farm the Dallas chapter. He made every single convention. He was a stalwart worker for the cause for space. He was passionate about the Mars Society. Unfortunately, this last year, he succumbed to cancer, and he's no longer with us. And in his memory, the Dallas chapter of the Mars Society is given a donation out of our chapter funds of $300 to the National Mars Society. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Roger Carr was a tireless worker for spreading the message of humans to Mars, and he'll be missed. Okay, all right. Who here is willing to give $100? Let's see him over there. Okay, Jim Burke, by the door. Okay, keep the hands up until they come to you. Over there, $100. Who else? $100. In the back, there's someone. Okay, there's two people I see in the back. $100. Over here as well. Okay, J. Richard Gott is willing to give $100. Other people, $100. You can do it. Okay, I mean it's barely more than a lift ticket. Okay, okay. Let's see, $100. Who's willing to give $100? That hasn't, if you've had your hands up and haven't answered. Okay, $50. Okay, several hands over there. Okay, if people would seek them out. Gentleman over here. Okay. There's a gentleman over here who's willing to give $50. Someone, please. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. I don't have a count, but it looks like we probably raised about $20,000 here tonight. in this room. So thank you. That will help a lot. So, that's it. Thanks for coming. See you tomorrow morning.